Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Tenders, author of The Perception Diet, and today I want to talk about why you might feel crazy as you walk along your awakening path and how to feel less crazy as you walk along your awakening path. Alright, so when we look back on history, every generation, every sect of people, every culture, every past civilization has people in it who were juxtaposing the culture, who were having an awakening experience, who were seeing the world differently, who were falling out of alignment with the consensus reality, and were essentially on what we would define as an awakening path, right? They were quite literally elevating their consciousness to a new place that was different from where everyone in the society they were living with was. And as they did this, we can look back and see that these people were often treated like they were crazy. They were treated like they were criminals. They were treated like they had something wrong with them. And another thing that we can kind of gain from looking back at history and people who were revolutionary or evolutionary in the way that they thought, in the way that they lived, is in the beginning of their awakening, in the beginning of their seeing things differently, in the beginning of their starting to express that they saw things differently, they were oftentimes persecuted and they were oftentimes criticized and judged and made to feel like there was something wrong with them. And then there were figures that, have unfolded throughout history that rose above that and then became heroes of ours, right? There are definitely figures like Nelson Mandela, Malcolm X, Gandhi, that were, well, Gandhi doesn't really count. Later, right? After he had passed away, we started to see that, no, definitely what he was doing was revolutionary and advancing the culture, and we should have thought more like him, and we are trying to think more like him now, I believe. However, right, there were definitely people that in their time they were seen as revolutionary and accepted, but most people, especially in recent history, as they were evolving their consciousness, were not accepted and were, as I said, persecuted and jailed and treated very, very poorly. And so the first thing that you need to consider as you awaken your consciousness is that what you're going to be bumping up against over and over and over and over again, and we've talked about this on this channel a little bit, but I want to talk about it more as we go along, is that you're going to be bumping up against seeing the consensus culture, the way that normal people see the world and the systems that are at play and why we believe those systems are at play and why we believe we all must participate in those systems. You're going to start to see that as faulty. You're going to start to see the cracks in that logic. You're going to start to see the cracks in the foundation. You're going to start to see the cracks in how that reality doesn't actually align with the true reality that you are starting to wake up to. So if we kind of take this conversation and back it up and say, yes, okay, we understand that all throughout history, all throughout time, there's always been people who were awakening their consciousness, who were seeing things differently, and they were treated like they were crazy. They were treated like they were criminal. They were treated like they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And even in today's culture, when we're not necessarily quite so persecuted, we're not, the risk of being jailed for going on your awakening path is definitely less nowadays than it was maybe 100 years ago. That being said, okay, you're still very much going to feel like the odd person out. You're going to wind up feeling very confused, and you're going to go through probably a long period of time where, like I say, your consciousness is starting to find the cracks in the foundation of how everyone else is living and how everyone else is thinking, and you're going to start to realize that it doesn't make sense. And the reason that you're going to start to feel that it doesn't make sense, okay, is because fundamentally what the awakening path is aligning your perception with ultimate reality, is aligning your perception with the actual structure that makes up our universe, the actual structure that makes up our Earth experience, the actual structure that makes up you, versus the cultural dictation of those things. All right? So we need to understand that as an unawake society, all we really mean by that is that we are living in a way that is out of alignment with true reality. That's all it is. And waking up is simply coming back closer and closer and closer into alignment with true reality. Now, I am not here to define what true reality is for you, because another thing that you're going to find as you awaken is that truly every level of awakening that you go on and every level of consciousness that your vessel is able to hold, all right, you're going to find that there are slightly different rules for how the reality functions within that consciousness. Either that, or you're going to discover that it's just the more you understand about reality, the more creativity you have within it, the more choice you have within it, the more option you have within it, because the more you understand the structure of something, right, the more you can create. The more understanding you have of math, the more you can engage in algebraic function, right? The less understanding you have of math, the less creativity you have. The more you understand about how architecture works, the more you can create a complicated structure. The less you understand, the less you're going to be able to create something complicated. You see how this works? So as you awaken to reality, as you awaken to true reality, how true reality functions, the actual laws of nature, the actual laws that govern your body, the actual laws that govern the universe, you're going to start to see that these laws, these true laws, the true structure is very different from the structure that most people think the world operates under. And of course, all right, we need to understand that living out of alignment with the true structure and living in alignment with the false structure or the consensus structure that most people live under causes suffering. It causes us pain. There is a saying that says you cannot break the laws of nature, you can only break yourself against them. And this is exactly true. We cause ourselves most of our suffering through not understanding how reality functions, having a belief that this is how reality is and this is how reality should go, and then acting in accordance with that belief, having reality reflect back to us that that's not how it works. So essentially, what you think is going to happen when you do this doesn't actually occur, something different occurs, and you assume the reality is wrong, right? I was right, I should be able to lose weight when I do this diet. And then you go on that diet and you don't lose weight, you think, well, my body's wrong. My body didn't do it properly. Rather than saying, maybe the diet is wrong. My body is correct. My body is nature. My body knows what it's doing. I had a false assumption about the reality. I made a decision based on that false assumption, and the results showed me that's not how reality is, right? Most of us don't do that. Most of us say, I go on the diet, I expect to lose weight, I didn't lose weight, my body is wrong, reality is wrong. And this keeps us caught in the consensus reality. This keeps us feeling completely disempowered. This keeps us feeling like we couldn't possibly understand anything because we keep doing things in alignment with what we think should be and in alignment with what we're being told and what the consensus reality is feeding to us all day long, and not getting the results that we want, and then assuming reality is wrong, assuming we are wrong, assuming we must have done something wrong, that it's not the diet's fault, it's our body's fault, it's my fault, you see? And so as we start to wake up, you really do start to take more and more responsibility for yourself and for the results that you're getting in your life. And that's another huge thing that you're going to realize makes you look crazy. Because to everybody else, to take responsibility for their life would mean they have to start changing, is really the bottom line, right? Waking up is really has a lot to do with how much you're gonna have to change, right? We are so afraid to admit we don't know what we don't know that we would rather hold on to something that is clearly not working, but that we think we understand, because that feels safer than saying, okay, maybe I don't understand, and I'm going to have to go and do these experiments for myself and see for myself what actually works and what actually doesn't in order for me to understand how it works. So as you awaken, you are taking responsibility for yourself. As you awaken, you are seeing where the consensus reality and the true reality don't align. As you awaken, you are seeing where you have to take those moments of really saying, okay, I'm just going to observe what's happening. I'm going to really not abdicate my responsibility onto the government, onto the education system, onto the medical system, onto all these systems that want to tell me how it works, but I'm still not getting the results that I want, right? I'm still not feeling healthier. I'm still not feeling more vibrant. I'm not feeling more capable. I'm not feeling more in alignment with who I am. I'm not feeling more successful. And noticing that the system that exists right now is really one that is designed to keep us disempowered. And I don't believe that that's an evil thing. I don't really believe that it's that the system is evil and that's why we're staying disempowered. We need to understand that we vote for that system, right? We want the system that keeps us disempowered, because the truth is we feel that we are not capable of taking responsibility for ourselves. We are afraid that if we are responsible, that we're going to fuck it up. So we want to abdicate our responsibility onto the medical system, onto the government, onto the education and all this stuff, onto religion, onto anybody else to give us the answers, even if those answers don't work, and even if those answers keep us stuck in our disempowerment, because at least that feels safer, right? It just feels like if we fundamentally believe that we are not worthy and that we're not strong enough and we're not capable of figuring out the reality for ourselves, that we are always going to need the system that we're living under. We're always going to need the government, the manipulation essentially, because we feed into that with our disempowered nature. All right? So, what does all this have to do with feeling crazy? Back, I believe, in older times, when people were on an awakening path and they were stepping out of culture and they were stepping out of that disempowered culture that says trust government, trust religion, trust the education system, trust everything and everyone outside of you, and you couldn't possibly know and you couldn't possibly understand, and just live in alignment with what everyone else is doing and you'll be fine. When people started to wake up, they were stepping out of that system. And I believe in past times, there were always sages or schools of thought or mystery schools or other organizations that were happening that you could connect with, that had been on the path a little bit along before you, right? There were gurus, there were always these schools of thought and schools of teachers that were also stepping out of the culture and were awakening and were living in alignment with the truth rather than the consensus reality, because there's always been a consensus reality and there's always been true reality. So the people that were stepping out were able to sort of lead and guide and say, yeah, that's normal, this is normal, you're going to see this, you're going to feel this, keep going, keep going, keep going. And I feel that in a lot of ways, we've lost that in our current society. We really truly have lost the connection to the people who have broken out of society, who have broken out of the matrix, if you want to call it that, and are awakening to true reality. So people feel, I genuinely believe that people are feeling right now a lot more isolated on their journey. They're feeling a lot more like, okay, I'm losing control, I'm losing touch with the reality that everyone else is living in. That's all starting to not make any sense to me. I haven't fully awakened to the truth yet. In a way, in the sense that I've awakened enough to the truth that I'm comfortable in it. You see, I'm not saying that you have to fully and completely understand reality at large before you're going to feel comfortable in your awakening path, because I don't think that anyone's there. However, I do believe that we do get to a point where we have disconnected from the consensus reality enough that the true reality and our capacity to operate within the true reality comes into a place where we are more comfortable in that. And I will tell you that I have personally experienced that. I was absolutely in the matrix just like everybody else. I was born into it just like everybody else. And I went through a whole transition period where I was really starting to see that those structures that exist right now on the planet are not in alignment with the truth. They just are not life enhancing, they're not evolution enhancing, they're not empowering, they're disempowering. They are contrary to creation. They are contrary to evolution. They are contrary to empowerment. They are contrary to community. And all of that stopped making sense to me. However, I wasn't at a place in my life where I was living closer into alignment with the truth yet. I wasn't fully seeing more of how actual reality functions. I was still disempowered, and I was still looking for someone to give me the answers, and I was still searching, and I was still seeking, and I was in that liminal space where I didn't believe, or I could see that the old way wasn't working, but I didn't really see the new way yet. I didn't really have a good grounding or foothold in where I was going in the context of understanding reality and living within that. And that place in between was very uncomfortable and made me feel like a crazy person, because I didn't really yet have true evidence to say, no, what I'm thinking and where I'm going is right. You see what I'm saying here? I didn't really yet have the life experience. I didn't really yet have the cognitive experience. I didn't really have the evidence to support myself in saying, no, okay, I definitely have figured some things out, and this other reality that is not the consensus reality does exist, and I can operate within it, and it's true, like I have now. But in that middle space, I didn't have that. So what I'm wanting to give to you in this video is, number one, you're gonna lose touch with the old thing before you really start to understand how reality actually functions, okay? And that is an uncomfortable thing to go through. It is uncomfortable to lose the old thing before you have the new thing. But that's normal. So if you're feeling crazy, if you're feeling like, I don't agree with where everyone else is at, but I don't really know where I'm going, I don't really have a foothold in the next thing, in the true reality, I don't really understand anything, I just feel like I don't like what everyone else is doing, but I don't really have an alternative, that's okay. That's normal. Keep going down that path, because the true reality is already functioning. That is the biggest key to take away from this. You don't have to discover it for it to start working. Just like we didn't have to discover gravity before everything stuck to the earth. All right? Once we discovered gravity, it's not as though everything was floating and then it fell to the ground once we figured out that mathematical equation. Gravity was already functioning. So the true reality is already functioning. It's already in place. And yes, we have a lot of systems in the matrix, in the false reality, in whatever you want to call it, that contradict the true reality. All right? And that's okay. It's just allowing yourself to let go of belief systems and allowing yourself to observe true reality as it is, and that's a slow process. It's just a process. And so my biggest advice here is, if you're feeling crazy, that's normal. Keep going. You're supposed to feel crazy, because you're stepping out of what everyone else is doing. You haven't fully stepped into the awareness of what's true yet, and you're in this in between, and no one's going to understand you. There aren't going to be a lot of people that understand you, is really what I'm saying here. So if you're feeling crazy, that's normal. That's good. You're letting go of the old thing, and that is going to make you feel crazy for a while. But just know that the new thing, the true reality, is not new. It's old, it's always been there, it's always been functioning, and you're just gonna step more and more and more into it, and eventually, as you start to let go of these old ideas, you start to live in alignment with true reality, because that's more natural, it's actually easier, and your life will start to reflect it, and you will get comfortable, all right? So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave those down below. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff, and I will see you in the next video, all right? Mwah.